All right, let's get going on this great, what they call Moon Day or Monday. And good morning, everyone. My name is Oliver, and I am so happy and grateful to be here today for this session of Truly Foundation and A Course in Miracles, where we share advanced spirituality and a whole lot of love. And I'm excited today that we are going to be delving into Workbook Lesson 254 out of the Workbook for Students section of the book, A Course in Miracles. And I will be your guide, your temporary guide through this session, your host, your coach, your teacher. And it is my pleasure to be all of that for you temporarily. And I only say temporary because it is my goal to point you to that which is permanent. That which is permanent is what we all share. And it is really, really the real you, the you that God created before the foundation of this world. You and I and all the living things existed before. Notice now, we existed before the foundation of this world. Therefore, our what we call birth, which is only a temporary experience, but there is an awareness of a body, which is given a name and a social security number. Let's not confuse that as our identification. It is not. That which was produced in and through our natural mother's womb is only temporary. It's a temporal body. It's a part of all and every element of matter that is temporal. But only that which God creates, only that which love creates is real, is eternal, is infinite, it is impersonal. It's not a personal self. Our reality is not a personal self. Our personality is not our true identification. It is our chosen way of expression, no more than that, while we're in this dimension. But who we are in our truest self, in our only self, is the same self that all living creation, as well as its creator. It is that which we all share. It is the one entity that we all share. It's the one life that we all share. It's the one being that we are. Oh my God, when you understand this, that personality and personal is not our true identity. It is a game changer. But that personality and that personal self that has a body, that is just the vehicle, that is just the communication device, that is just the unique gift expression that we have the opportunity to really shine through and express who we really are at our essence and at our nature, which is love. And here on Truly Foundation, at Truly Foundation, we call that, we point you to that, which we call the real you that loves you because the real you is love. That means that the real you is impregnable. The real you being infinite, meaning it has no beginning and no end. The real you being eternal, it means that you are a part of eternity. The real you being unalterable and changeless represents the fact that you are that which God is, the changeless one, the unalterable one. It means that you know nothing but that which is real. That means that certain concepts like birth and death is not a part of your identity. So we have that experience here on this dimensional world, but it's not real. It's not the beginning and it's not the end. It's just an experience that you're having here. Mm, mm. It means that you transcend time and space. You allow time and space to exist. You allow it to exist just in your thinking. You allow the concept of finite to exist just in your thinking. But just like the big black screen in the movie theater remains unchanged and untouched by any event or activity or sensation or plot or scheme or story that plays out on its screen. It's not affected by any movie, any activity that is projected onto its screen. It just remains what unchanged by it. When the movie is over, when it says the end, the big black movie screen remains unchanged. All of that happened during that hour and 50-minute movie. Likewise, who we really are and our true identification and our infinite, self-aware, and impersonal self, we are totally unaffected. Who we are totally unaffected by what happens in what appears to be a personal life with personal history. None of this changes who we are. None of this impacts our value. None of it impacts our oneness with each other and with our Creator. Ah, it is this level of awareness, it's this level of consciousness that causes us to understand that we are not an effect of a tiny mad idea. We're not an effect of an idea of separation. We're not an effect of an idea of lack or scarcity. We're not uh, the effect of anything, but we are what we call a part of causation, or we are a cause because we are one with that which is the cause of everything, which we put a label on it, like sometimes we call it God or source or the universe. We call it many things, but no matter what you call it, the source or the causation of everything, that which is the ultimate of the ultimate, which is cause. That is what we are one with. And that makes all of us happy. And so our self image of ourself, our self esteem, our ability to be self aware of this reality, these realities that we're talking about here, calls us to really, really, truly be what Jesus said we are, and that is, we are the light of this world. This world don't light us up, but we are the light of the world. We are the purpose. We are the source. We are the black screen. We are the big black screen on this stage called life. And all of life plays out on our screen of consciousness and awareness. But it's only temporary. And when all of this is over, when all of the shenanigans are done with, when all of the falsity of life is over, like Jesus said, it'll all be folded up. It will be folded up like you fold up a cloth. In our experience here, as we know it, it will be done and done away with and dissolved. And all that will be left is what was always there, our true self, our infinite self, our self-aware, our impersonal self. And we just go on to the next iteration, the next glory, from glory to glory. Our endless nature, our endless love just keeps right on shining. Wow, what an introduction, Oliver. This is how I'm feeling this morning. I am feeling I am feeling filled with the glory of God. I'm feeling to the praise of his glory, which is what Paul said that we are in Ephesians 1, that we are to the praise of our Creator's glory. So that means we're continually expanding, we're continually being lifted upward and beyond what we could act or think. Just as our true identity. Just these things they won't teach you in grade school. Some of these things they don't even teach you in church, in religious communities, let alone the world. But here at Truly Foundation, you can always count on coming here and being inspired, being transformed by these advanced teachings, which renew our minds to that which is true and true always. So thank you for being here. So workbook lesson 254. That was my introduction. Workbook lesson 254 gives us a new idea for us to use as we are in this part 2 of this 365 days of what it calls A Course in Miracles, which is a course. This is a course that we're taking. It's a course in mind training. It's a course in thought reversal. It's a course by which we are letting go of a false perception of ourselves and all living things, even of this world, and that we're embracing what the course calls true perception. True perception, meaning what? True identification, true self-image, true self-esteem. And so we do that by distinguishing between that which is real and that which is not. that has to be a part of our renewal process, knowing what is real and what is not. And so the idea for today that helps us be renewed by our reality is this: let every voice but God's be still in me. Let me say that again. Let every voice, with the exception of God's voice, be still in me. Now, the Course talks about that there is a voice. And when we think of voice, having ears and a heart, when we think of voice, we think about that which is heard through the natural process of hearing. But when the Course talks about a voice, it's basically talking about that which entered into this experience with us in the form of memory. In other words, the Course says that uh, at the moment that the tiny mad idea said that we possibly separated from our Creator, what we said earlier was that the reality that separation is not possible. And so we, as a result of entertaining the idea that humanity went into a state of sleep, or a state of what the Course calls illusion, or a state of hallucination, or a state of vain imaginings, or fantasy, fantasizing what would it be like to be separate from our Creator, which is impossible. Why? Because we know from a universal law that what ideas leave not their source. And we are an idea of God, so it's impossible for us to separate from God or to leave from the source from which we were created. So legally, it's impossible for separation to occur. And so in this idea, or in this belief that it did happen, which it didn't, what the Course said is that the atonement principle was immediately enacted, whereby the atonement principle that says nothing happened. And the atonement principle also said that the remembrance of who we truly are, the remembrance of God, went into that dream with us as the memory of God, because the memory of God is the remembrance of ourselves, because we and God are one. So all of us, if you're here listening to me as a personal self, then you have the memory of God within your being. You have the memory of God within your heart. You have the memory of God within your mind. The memory of God is here with you. And the Course refers to that as the voice that speaks for God. It's to remind us of the truth. It's here with us. In religious communities, they call it the still small voice. Other religious paths calls it different, names, but it doesn't matter, again, what we call it. What is real is that there can never, ever be a separation between God and His creation. And so whatever state you may find yourself in, whatever state of mind or state of being that you may find yourself in, the voice of God is a part of your experience. You cannot be separate from God. David picked up on it in his Psalms when he said, if I make my bed in hell, he said, Father, you are there. So David was acknowledging that he cannot get away from your origin. You can't be unborn. You can't be uncreated. You can just dream of it. In other words, like Jesus told Nicodemus, uh, the new birth or the rebirth is not the process of going back into your mother's womb. Why? Because that's impossible. It's impossible for you to change your parental origin. You can choose another parental. You can choose other parents, but you can't undo the natural birth process. There's only one natural parent, one natural womb. You can't unchange that. That's a fact. And so when it talks about let every voice but God be still in me, here indicates that there is other voices that are in this world. And Paul mentioned it over in First Corinthians 14. 1 Corinthians 14 and 10. Paul said it this way. Paul said in 1 Corinthians 14:10, he says, there are, it may be, so many kinds of voices in the world. He said there could be. There are so many kinds of voices in the world, and none of them is without signification. Signification, meaning there's none of the voices are without meaning. We've heard of self-talk or inner talk. We've heard of the term still small voice. And here the Course recognizes that let every voice but God's be still in me, that there is a voice that can be heard other than the voice of God. And then Paul picks up on it and said, there are many voices in the world, and none are without meaning. In other words, each voice has a message. And here, when we talk about the voice, we're talking about not a audible voice or voice of sound, but we're talking about a voice that is, or an idea that is transmitted to us through our, what we would call the voice of our intuition. It is a voiceless voice. It is a soundless voice, but it's intuitive, meaning it is on a different frequency than a spoken voice. It is picked up through our intuition. Okay, and all of us have the mental ability to be intuitive, and we're all intuitive. This is where the self-talk comes through. This is where guilt and judgment comes through. And also, this is where the message of love comes through, the intuitive faculty, which we all possess. And so, the Course teaches that there is only one reality, and that reality speaks for itself. We call it the voice that speaks for God, or the memory of God. Yes, the intuitive remembrance of God is that voice that we say that speaks for God. And all of this is symbolic. When we're in this three-dimensional world, we cannot not but use symbols in language. And a lot of times symbols in language distorts the meaning, but we're not going to allow that to distort the meanings that we are sharing here at Truly Foundation. That's why we call it advanced. This is an advanced teaching of spirituality. And so the course says that there is a voice that speaks for God, and then there's a what? There's an ego voice. In other words, that idea of separation, the belief in separation, the belief that you are a personal self, belief that you are separate from not only from your creator God, but from each other. That promotes a whole thought system called the ego thought system. And that ego thought system is communicated to us intuitively. Like you said, many voices. And not necessarily what we hear with our ear, but what we hear intuitively. But that which we do hear with our ear, which comes through our vocal voice, our sounding voice, what you're listening to me, you're hearing my voice. I'm teaching something. I'm communicating something. We all are teaching and we all are communicating something all the time. And what we're teaching and communicating is who we believe ourselves to be. We either believe ourselves to be love, we either believe ourselves to be one, we either believe ourselves to be eternal, we either believe ourselves to be unchangeable and unalterable, we either believe ourselves to be divine and one with God, or we believe that separation not only is possible, but it actually is a reality, and that and that in that separation, it has destroyed and overtaken reality. And so, is our life communicating that separation is real, or is our life communication that the only thing that is real is our oneness with each other and with God? We're teaching something, all of us, all the time. Your life is either the voice for God, or it's either the voice of the ego. It is either promoting love, joy, peace, happiness, fulfillment, contentment, reality, or it's promoting sin consciousness, guilt, and fear. We cannot not participate in teaching something. So what is your life teaching? And so, one more reference before I get into the lesson. It says here that, the ego, the course says in the text portion that, well, let me just read it here. And this is in the text portion of the course. It's in chapter 5, section 8, paragraph 1. I could be wrong. I think that's the way I'm reading it. But anyway, it says this. It says, what you do not understand is that two voices speak for different interpretations of the same thing simultaneously. Wow. Notice what it said here. It says, what we do not understand is that there are two voices. There are two ideas that are being shared for different interpretations of the same thing simultaneously, or almost simultaneously. So anytime that we observe anything in the perceptual world, it says the response to that is two interpretations happening simultaneously or almost simultaneously. And it says, for the ego, always speak first. So one of the interpretation is coming from an ego thought system that has its basis in sin consciousness, guilt, and fear, and the belief in separation. And so it's promoting what? The world of separation. It's promoting what? It's promoting that we are not one. It's promoting that God has separated from his creation. His source has left his idea, which the Course said that's impossible. The ego communicates that love is not real. The ego communicates that love has been broken. Love has been shattered. That God's purpose has failed. And that humanity basically is what, on its own. No wonder we feel such a sense, when we feel such a sense of loneliness and separation, this is where it comes from, this idea. It's called the ego idea, the ego thought system, which was developed out of the belief in separation in this world of perception, in time and space, which we know that all of it's temporary, it's not real. However, it says an alternate interpretation. It says alternate interpretations are unnecessary until the first one has been made. In other words, the Course says that the ego will always speak first and loud. Why? Because it's promoting an idea of sin consciousness, guilt, and fear, which leads to self-judgment, or the judgment of others, or the judgment of something. The ego always leads us to judgment. In love, there is no judgment. The ego will always lead to judgment. And so if you find yourself always in judgment, always critical, then it's an indication that what we're listening to the voice of the ego, which will always lead us into what? Pain and suffering. And a poor self-image of ourselves. However, it says an alternate interpretations are unnecessary until the first one has been made. In other words, there is no need. Truth has no need to speak. It has no need to defend itself. It doesn't feel a threat. It's unnecessary even to get involved with an ego thought. Because in reality, there's only reality. There's only the truth. But it says, alternate interpretations are necessary until the first one has been made. So remember, the ego speaks loud and it speaks first. It generally comes to us in the form of a critic or a criticism, because that inner voice, that inner critic that we hear, seemingly hear, or intuitively feel, when our focus, when our inner ear is tuned to it, because through habit, through training, through conditioning. But here it says, it's not even necessary to respond with an alternate interpretation until the first one is made. And speaking itself was unnecessary before the ego was made. So even before the tiny mad idea of separation came into an awareness as a thought, as an idea, it said, speaking as we know it didn't even exist. And in heaven, you think in heaven, the communication that we use here that is very limited is the same communication that is used in heaven, and that is not true. It says speaking won't even necessary. This kind of languaging is not necessary. Languaging is not in heaven. Heaven is pure and whole and complete. There's just the oneness. Join as one, ever extending, ever expanding, ever expressing. With no resistance, no opposites. But here in this perceptual world that we made, languaging is necessary. Speaking is necessary. Why? We're trying to find our way back home. So language and speak and voice serves as a signpost to point us into the right direction, to point us inwardly, not outwardly. The ego will always want you to point you outwardly. They say, look, see what's happening out there. Look at all the evidence. Look at all the, look at all the evidence that separation is real. Look at all the evidence that there is no peace, there is no joy, there is no prosperity, there is no increase, there is no happiness, no joy. There is everything is falling apart. So the ego will always have you to look at the evidence that is outside. Spirit would say, look within. There is no outside. There's only the inward. There's only love. There is no duality. And so it says, the ego speaks in judgment. See, the ego is going to judge. It must judge because it's in fear. It feels threatened. It feels under attack. The personal self always feels threatened, under attack, separate, vulnerable, limited. And who we really are. We don't feel, we are. We merely are. Our infinite, impersonal, and self-aware being that we share with all living things. And there is nothing to fear. We just be the reality of love, which is who we are. It says the ego speaks in judgment, and the Holy Spirit, our whole spirit, that spirit, that voice that speaks for God, call it the Holy Spirit. You call it your own voice, or the voice of God, or the voice of Christ. It doesn't matter what we call it. It says this spirit, which is whole, reverses the decision of the ego. Much as a Supreme Court has the power to reverse the lower court's decision. It's like this is just a symbol. We know how it works in the natural, where the Supreme Court, when the Supreme Court speaks, it's done. And they can the Supreme Court has the power to reverse the lower court's decision about the laws of this world. But likewise, the voice that speaks for God has the power to reverse the voice of the ego. Why? Because the voice of the ego is an illusion. How can an illusion change reality? How can a shadow be frightening? Not real. So when we hear the ego voice speaking loud and speaking first, contrary to our reality, it says that what? Only then does what? The voice of God reminds us and reverses every idea that the ego voice speaks about us. And this happens to us intuitively in most cases. Here it says, if you will lay aside the ego's voice, however loudly it may seem to call, and we know how that self-talk happens internally. If you will not accept its petty gifts, which gives you nothing that you really want, if you will listen with an open mind, which has not told you what salvation is, then you will hear the mighty voice of truth. Here, the Course calls the voice that speaks to God the mighty voice of truth. It mean that it speaks loud, doesn't mean that it speaks first. It only speaks if it has to what? If it has to reverse an idea that the ego is suggesting to you that it's not true. In many cases, we're not trained or practiced in hearing that voice, because we lay hold of a false idea or a false thought that the ego suggests to us. And we never sit quietly or still enough to hear the truth that is true always. He said that this mighty voice of truth is quiet in power. Quiet in power. Not loud, but quiet in power. It's strong in stillness. That this voice is a still, small voice. And it said it is completely certain in its messages. Absolutely certain. There's no confusion. There is no uncertainty when the voice of truth has been spoken. And here at Truly Foundation and our use of the ideas that are shared in the Course in Miracles, it is our purpose to bring absolute certainty to your true identity as the real you, to your true identity as one with God, to your true identity of having equality with your Creator, equality with each other. That's our messaging, so that you can be absolutely certain of who you are. You're not confused about your identity. You're not confused about your self-image. You're not confused about your identity. Jesus demonstrated that his entire life, even as a child, after he came into the revelation of a loving Father, extending himself and calling himself the I am loving creation. From that moment on, he never accepted, even from his parents, even from his religious upbringing, anything that would remotely indicate that God is an unloving Father. And that anything that God created was unloving. That was his message. The fatherhood of God. And God's perfect creation, which he called man, the brotherhood of man. And so, with that foundation laid, let's look at the lesson. Let every voice but God's be still in me. Now, this is making sense, right? It says, and first we're going to make a declaration here. And so we declare that God is our Father, that there's only one God and Father of us all. So today, we would but hear our Father's voice. In deepest silence, we would come to the Father of creation to hear the voice and to receive that word. I have no prayer but this. I have no request but this. I come to a loving Father to ask you for the truth. That's the only prayer, is that of the truth. No need to playing around with any other thing but the truth. And so, and truth is but your will. That's why we want to know the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Why? Because that is the will of the Father. That's what Jesus said. I come to do thy will, O God. He said, all have been called, but a few have chosen what? Truth. Few have chosen what? The will of God. And truth is but your will, which I or which we would share with you today. And so it's an acknowledgement that all that one really desire in the ultimate is what? The truth that is true always. And that truth is God's will. And that will is our will because there's only one will. Why is there only one will? Because there's only one of us, including God. And God knows, oh my God, God knows what's best for us. God has our best interest at heart. God is more interested in your and my happiness than we could ever think or ask. He knows everything. And he has given us everything in creation. And because of that tiny mad idea, that tiny mad idea became a huge mountain, a block. We erected a huge falsity or a false idea or a false self. We erected a veil. The Bible describes it as a veil. And that Jesus came and he what? He tore down the veil. He rent it. And said that our idea of a false separated self, we describe it as sinners. We're all sinners. That idea, I rent it. It was the mountain you built between yourself and reality. He says it's been rented. It's been done away with. We keep erecting it. And so, today, we let no ego thoughts direct our words or our actions. Notice now, words and actions are directed by thoughts. That's why this whole course is a course in thought correction. It's a course in what? It's a course in thought reversal. That is the miracle. When we reverse our thoughts, what happens? It affects our what? Our words and our actions. That's why there's so much focus here on the thoughts. Where do the thoughts happen? In the mind. That's where transformation happens. Where? By the renewing of the mind. So the focus and the energy should be on what? The renewing of the mind. Not the preservation of the body, but the renewing of the mind. Why? Because that is what activates our words and our action. You cannot outperform your thoughts. You cannot outperform your thoughts. They will inevitably form your words and then your action. And your actions will inevitably be the results that you experience or how you experience life. Will you experience life from the ego thought system of sin, consciousness, guilt, and fear, or will you experience life from the only reality there is, and that is what? The mind of Christ, which is abundance. Jesus said it this way: I've come that you may have life and have it how? More abundantly. And it happens through our thoughts, through our ideas that we either accept or we reject as being reality or truth. And we're here to help you and all humanity to be able to sort out the real from the unreal. Because that is going to determine your what, words and your actions and your results and your experience. So when such thoughts occur, ego thoughts, when they occur, and they are occurring all the time. We live in this field, we live in this atmosphere that has been charged with the ego thought system of sin consciousness, guilt, and fear, and lack and scarcity. He says, so when thoughts occur, and they're occurring all the time, we're either accepting them or rejecting them. When such thoughts occur, we quietly step back. Notice now, we quietly step back and look at them, and then we let them go. So you're not your thoughts. If you can step back from them and look at them, that means that you're not your thoughts. There's only one thought. And that one thought in reality is God is, and there is nothing else. That's the only true thought. God is. Therefore I am, and there is nothing else. All else are illusions. Love is, and there is nothing else. All else are illusions. All else are experiences that we're having as a result of accepting a thought or an idea that has become words in action that is creating an experience of pain and suffering. And we don't want that. So we let them go. We look at them and we let them go. It didn't say we look at them and judge them. No, we look at them and let them go. We learned earlier that he says, what it says, we look, we wait, and we judge not. That's what forgiveness does. It looks, it waits, and it judges not. We do not want what they would bring with them. We do not want what the ego thoughts or the ego thought system would bring with it. It can only produce after its own kind. So thoughts of separation can only produce after its own kind. So it will bring separation, inequality, and division with it if we accept these ideas or these thoughts as our very own. But not so. We step back and we look and we let them go. Every day of your life, you are being invited to take on a thought of an idea or an idea. And our ability to correctly choose reality versus unreality, love versus hate, true perception versus false perception. It's what the renewal and the transformation process is all about. And that's what we're doing. And to not be engaged in this type of process in your life is to be what they call what? Que sera, sera, whatever it shall be, shall be. The ego having a field day in our life. But not so. And so we do not choose to keep them. We don't want them, and we choose not to keep them. We don't want what they bring, so we choose not to keep or to embrace or to attach ourselves with those egoic ideas. And so when we choose not to accept them, it says they go silent. They are silent now. So it's through the practice of this that once we become uh, managers of our lives, we really come to understand that we are responsible for what thoughts we hold and what those that we reject. It says, and so we do not choose to keep them. They are silent now. And in stillness, hallowed by his love, God speaks to us and tells us of our will as we have chosen to remember. See, remembrance is a choice. Remember, it is the remembrance of God that came into this dimension with us to remind us of who we are. And so here is saying the way this works out is that all of these thoughts, all of these ideas of the ego is floating in the atmosphere, looking for a place to land. We're not that place. Up until now, may have been, but from here forward, we're not that place to carry out those, to accept those thoughts and ideas, to speak them, and then to what? Take action on them. We're not that one. We're not that. None of us are, unless you choose. And it comes when we do practice this and learn to not accept them. They become silent. And in that silence and stillness, we hear the voice that speaks for God, that is still in us, sharing with us what our will is, what our true purpose is, what our true identity is. As we have chosen to remember. Jesus says, do this in remembrance of me. That's what he meant. Not him as a person, but the idea, the reality of who we are. It's talking about identification. It's talking about your self-image of yourself. And so, there is but a single voice in reality that creator and creation share. The voice for God. We share it. It is our voice. It's God's voice. And I'm going to end it by going over to a section in this section in the back of the Blue Book of A Course in Miracles. It's called. This section is called "The Song of Prayer: Prayer, Forgiveness, and Healing." An extension of the principles of A Course in Miracles. And so on page 1, under this section, it's the last section of the book, the Blue Book, the Song of Prayer. It says, prayer is the greatest gift with which God blessed his creation at creation. Prayer is the greatest gift that God has given us. And he gave that to us at creation, is what it said. It was then. Prayer was then what it is to become. And what is it to become? It says, prayer is the single voice creator and creation share. That's what true prayer is. Is that there is but the one voice, and we share it with God. That whole and complete voice, that voice that speaks for truth. That is what true prayer is. It is the one single voice that we share with God and with each other. It says the song that the Son sings to the Father, the song that creation sings to its creator, who returns the thanks it offers him unto the Son, unto creation. So it says that one single voice is the voice that the Son shares with the Father, and the Father returns that one voice to the Son or to his creation. It is oneness joined as one, as the Lord says. Is but the one. Again, it's all about our true identification. Our true identification has its foundation in our oneness, not in separation, not in division, not in inequality. but in oneness and equality and love that is unchangeable. It says that it is it says endless the harmony. It says endless is this harmony, this single voice, and endless too, the joyous course of the love that we give forever to each other. I and you and me, we're one. That which is in the vine is in the branch. That which is in the creator is in his creation. And in this creation, or in this exchange, in this oneness, it says, is creation extended. God gives thanks to his creation and to the extension in his creation. His creation gives thanks for his creation. The Son gives thanks to the Creator. We give thanks to God. God gives thanks to us. In the song of his creating, in our Father's name, or in our Father's nature. The love that we share is what all prayer will be throughout eternity. When time is done, for such it was before time seemed to be. My God, my God. My love, my love. This is the truth that is true always. And so today it is true. Today it is true that we make a choice to let every voice, but God's voice, but our voice, but the one voice that we share, the one single voice that we share, the one prayer, the one song of prayer that we share, be still in us. That's a choice we make. It's a choiceless choice. We have no choice. In reality, there is no choice. There's only the one. We just played the choice game in the dream of separation. Thank you so much. This was Workbook Lesson 254. My name is Oliver Blue, and I am so happy to be in this oneness with you and with all humanity. How sweet it is to be loved by him. Until tomorrow, one voice only, one love only, one reality only. And not just till tomorrow, but throughout all eternity, there is nothing but the one. We are a part of that one. So, to all of my viewing audience out there, all my brothers and sisters, especially you, Heidi, I say Selah until tomorrow. Have a great day. Bye-bye.